your letter of April 20th requesting that I dictate some of my experiences with Rabbi Abraham Hazelcorn in our joint efforts to help the survivors of the Holocaust in Germany. My name is Albert A. Hutler, former captain, United States Army, in American military government. I was the displaced persons officer in charge of the displaced person section for LKB Mannheim, Detachment E7, Company E, 2nd Military Government Regiment, stationed in Mannheim. My duties were as chief of the displaced persons section, which included the provinces of Baden and Württemberg. During the period which is covered by this dictation, I was a first lieutenant. It's interesting to note at this time that your letter arrived on VE Day, which encouraged me to take down my old Army records and look through them for information for you. Just as a matter of background, I should tell you that my unit arrived in Mannheim with the infantry that crossed the Neckar River to take the city of Mannheim. We crossed in rubber boats, and the Germans retreated, and by nightfall the town was taken. The next day we went to the only remaining public building, Rathaus 7, in order to establish military government headquarters. I believe that this was toward the end of March of 1945. My first military government report on the subject of displaced persons that I can find was written on April 4th, 1945. I estimated that at that time we had approximately 31,000 DPs in Mannheim and its suburbs, not counting the rest of the area. Among them, I am sure, were a number of Jews, but at that point we were not in the position to divide the Jews from the rest of the displaced persons, so there is no record of the number of Jewish DPs that were in Mannheim at that time. New paragraph. I am going to answer your questions, some of your questions first, before I go into detail about what took place in those days. I think it's far better if I just tell the story, and some of it will answer a few of your questions, period. Question number one, when and under what conditions did you first meet Rabbi Abraham Hazelcorn? I met Rabbi Hazelcorn, to the best of my knowledge, in early April of 1945, when he was the Jewish chaplain in our section of the 7th Army, and we worked together on helping individual Jews who were in the Mannheim, Heidelberg area. At that time, we both agreed that we would work jointly in helping as many Jews, both individually and in groups, as possible. And it was agreed at our first meeting that this would be carried out both by the rabbi and myself. This latter statement is an answer to your question, was it at this first meeting that he solicited your help in providing for the refugees? My answer to that question, I think, is also an answer to question number 3. Why did he ask you, and what did he want you to do? Please give as detailed an account as possible as to what transpired for a period. My narrative will answer this question much more fully, and I would rather do it in narrative form than just as an answer to the question, period. Other Jewish GIs were involved, but it is impossible for me to recall all of their names. However, the most active one, and the one with whom I was associated all during this period, is Harold Weiss, W-E-I-S-S, period. If you want his address, I'm sure that you can get it from Ernest Michel, M-I-C-H-E-L, who is now the Executive Vice President of the New York United Jewish Appeal Federation. 220 West 58th Street, New York, New York, 10019. Originally from Detroit, Harold Weiss has been living in Europe as an employee of the United States. Weiss, during his activities with me, did many things that were above and beyond the call of duty as far as Jews were concerned, providing them with food and clothing, which he was able to secure, and actually was a liaison between my office and DP's, period. More about his activities will be told in the narrative, period. Question number 4, how long, exact dates if possible, were you involved with Rabbi Hazelcorn in helping the Jewish survivors? Please relate every type of assistance that you gave them. To the best of my ability and knowledge, I was involved with Rabbi Hazelcorn from about April 4th until I left Germany to go home sometime in late October, both of these dates being in 1975. I'm sorry, both of these dates being in 1945. I will relate our types of assistance that we gave to Jewish survivors as part of the narrative rather than in answer to the question. Question number 5. Please characterize the role of Rabbi Hazelcorn in these activities. What do you think might have happened had he not been there? I don't know what kind of a rabbi Hazelcorn was in his pulpit because I never attended any services where he was the rabbi. However, I do know that he was one of the most compassionate individuals I have ever met, and probably did what I consider the finest piece of work amongst survivors of the Holocaust of any rabbi that I was associated with. He had an extremely active role in working with Jewish survivors, much beyond what the regulations permitted, period. However, he never seemed to worry very much about the regulations, and because of that, did a magnificent job, which I am convinced saved the lives of many of the individuals concerned, period. He touched the lives of thousands of people, some of whom we touched jointly, and some of whom we still keep contact with. Among them are the Schauder family, Schauder, who now live in San Diego, Ernest Michel in New York, Merek, M-E-R-E-K, Gutman in Haifa, and several others. Everyone that was touched by Rabbi Hazelcorn, and whom we still see, speak very, very highly of Hazelcorn and what he did for them, period. The fact that they still maintain contact with him, both on a personal basis and by correspondence, is an indication of the kind of role that Hazelcorn played in those days. I just cannot speak too highly of his activities, his courage, and his compassion. If, at least in the case of the survivors of Weinigen concentration camp, those 249 that I will tell you about, who survived the ordeal of that camp, I am convinced that most of them would not have been alive today if it had not been for Hazelcorn's involvement with them and for his pressures on me as the displaced persons officer to bring them from the French zone into the American zone in 1945. Question number 6. Did you ever meet other American Jewish chaplains? If so, please be specific about your involvement, i.e., where and under what circumstances, who initiated the contact, the type of help involved, and your general impression of the effectiveness of the chaplains. I did meet many American Jewish chaplains, but most of them I met either in England or in France after the invasion. In Germany, and in my role as the displaced persons officer for my section, the only rabbis that I recall meeting were Rabbi Klausner, Klausner, Rabbi Max Browdy, who is now the director of ORT, Rabbi Nadich, and Rabbi Morris Kurtzer. I had little involvement with any of them, with the exception of Rabbi Max Browdy, who was the Jewish chaplain for the 7th Army. I had some involvement with Rabbi Nadich and Rabbi Morris Kurtzer during this period. I cannot recall who initiated the contacts, but I knew the rabbis very well from my activities in the States. Rabbi Nadich was very encouraging and most helpful in his position, and Rabbi Morris Kurtzer was of assistance in dealing with some problems which I cannot recall. It's difficult for me to be able to tell you anything about the effectiveness of the chaplains, except in the case of Hazelcorn, and I've expressed myself on that already. I would say in general that all of the chaplains that I met during this period were extremely effective in helping Jewish survivors. This went, in most instances, also for the non-Jewish chaplains, period. However, naturally, the Jewish chaplains were the most helpful, did things that certainly were not within the regulations, and did everything possible for Jewish survivors, period. In one instance, however, I remember how disturbed I was by one chaplain, one Jewish chaplain, who told a number of Polish Jewish survivors who needed a pass or some kind of permission to go back to Poland to look for their family, that he was much too busy to work with individuals. He was involved in the masses of displaced persons. However, in the main, I think that the Jewish chaplains did a magnificent job in saving the survivors of concentration camps and in helping to give them a second life, period. New paragraph. As I looked through our records, and as I recall the days a little more than 30 years ago, I think the most dramatic thing that Rabbi Hazelcorn and I were able to do was the establishment of the Langenthal camp at Schloss Langenthal in the hills of Heidelberg, in a beautiful castle. This started when Hazelcorn came to me one day in early June of 1945 to tell me that there were a group of Jewish survivors in the French zone near Mannheim, who had been taken out of Weinigen concentration camp and had been brought by the French to a small village to be nursed back to health, period. The village had been evacuated of all Germans so that these Jewish survivors could live there under the care of a French Red Cross group and the French military government. Hazelcorn had heard about them and gone down to see them, and had been advised by their leadership that the French were going to close the village and send all of the Jewish survivors to a French-Polish displaced persons camp, period. He told me that the Jews were very fearful of going to such a camp and said that they would be in danger of their lives if they were sent to that camp. He asked me to go there to see them, and then after seeing them to make a decision as to whether I should not bring them to the American zone. Period. I demurred because you should understand that the regulations were very severe about taking displaced persons from one zone to another, especially those who might be pretty permanent DPs and have to be fed, clothed, and housed over a long period of time. And this certainly was true of Jews. Period. However, Hazelcorn convinced me to go to this village, and I went on a date I don't recall with my sergeant, Harold Weiss. Period. When we got there, we were greeted with tremendous warmth, and we felt as if the fate of these 249 men from Rodham, Poland, was in our hands. I can't tell you the kind of feeling that we got under these circumstances, but it's the closest thing to a feeling of playing God that I have ever been involved with, and I also must confess that I did not like it, period. I talked with all of the survivors in this village and became convinced that even though regulations did not permit, that it would be far better if these people were brought into my zone to be taken care of, rather than permitted to be sent to a Polish DP camp, period. However, because there would be a shortage of beds and mattresses, pillows, and necessities of that type, I did not want to appear as if I were eager to take these Jewish survivors. When I went to the French army officer in charge of the village, period, I discussed his problems with him. We established a good relationship, and he told me of his problem with the Jewish survivors and how he disliked sending them to this Polish DP camp because he knew it would not be good for them. He had become very much attached to them and wanted to do the right thing and wanted very much for the Americans to take them into their zone. I finally made him an offer that if he could get me 250 beds, mattresses, and pillows, that I would move them into the American zone and take care of them from then on. He advised me that he could get the things that I wanted, and suggested that but that I would have to pick them up myself in our own trucks and bring them back to the American zone. We made arrangements for this pickup, period. At that time, we had a French Red Cross team operating with our section, and on this team was a Mademoiselle Daher, D-A-H-E-R, of Paris, who volunteered to go out and in the truck and pick up the material that we had agreed upon from the various French camps that she would have to go to get it, period. On a very rainy day, Madame Daher went out in the trucks, secured all of the materials that were necessary, and brought them back to the American zone. I should tell you that unfortunately, from this trip she contracted pneumonia, was sent back to Paris, and I later found that she had died. Period. Incidentally, she was a magnificent woman of an old French family who did a great deal for the Jewish survivors. Period. In the meantime, Chaplain Hazelcorn and I had found a small school in Benchheim where we could bring these Jewish survivors from Rodham, Poland. Without my commanding officer knowing what was taking place, we set this small school up as a DP camp for our Jewish DPs, which were incidentally the first group we ever had in my area. We brought them to the camp and set them up there, made sure that there was plenty of food, and got the camp started. The camp was to be a temporary camp while we looked for a better location and better place, period. Shortly thereafter, Rabbi Hazelcorn and I found Schloss Langenzell, which was a castle in the hills of Heidelberg, near the village of Langenzell, in which a number of German families and non-German collaborators were living. We threw all of them out of their quarters and brought in the Jews from Rodham sometime toward the end of June, sometime, I believe it was June 18th, 1945. At this point, I went to my colonel, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Winning, W-I-N-N-I-N-G, a former professor at New York University, to tell him what I had done, and suggested that I knew that I had broken the regulations, and if he felt a court-martial was coming to me, I would be willing to stand, but there was nothing else that I could do. Period. Colonel Winning, a very understanding, compassionate person, with whom I had been associated since my days in military government in England, said to me that he was very glad that I did it, and that he would have been disappointed if I had not, and would like now to go out and see, quotes, our Jews, end of quotes, period. With that, I made arrangements for him to come out to see the camp in a few days, and I went out to the camp to talk to the residents and discuss with them the visit of the commanding officer. I suggested to them that they should clean up the Schloss and make it look very good, so that the colonel would not think that they were people who did not know how to take care of the place in which they lived. I will never forget that Meyer Gutman, as chairman of the committee of the Jewish survivors of Schloss Langenzell, turned to me and said that they would not do that. And I said to him that if they would not clean the castle, then I would see to it that they just got the ordinary rations and that they would not be getting the kind of rations we were giving to them. In turn, Grobman made the statement that I could do what I wanted about it, but they were not going to clean the place themselves. I remember telling him that though I was Jewish and had great sympathy for my people, I still was an officer in the American Army. And that I would have to take some measures to make them clean the place. He then said to me that, look, all these years we've had to clean for the Germans. Look what the Germans did to us. Why should not now the Germans clean